Uh-oh, somebody's microphone. I'm sorry. It might be a little bit off balance, your mic here, I'm not sure. If you want to do that before we get started.
Sorry about that.
You're okay.
Is it good now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
So good afternoon. My name is Leonardo Brown. I have the pleasure of serving as the County Administrator for Richland County. Here behind me, we have a number of members of Richland County Council that are present. To my left, Council Member and Council Chair Derek Pugh. And then immediately, slightly behind me, we have Council Member Allison Terratio. And to my immediate right, we have Council Member Branham. And to his right, we have our Emergency Management Director for Richland County, Michael Bird. So before we get started, I want to just take a brief moment on behalf of Richland County Council and County Administration to say to all of those who were affected by the storm that our support is certainly with you. For those of you who have experienced damage or even the loss of life, property, homes, we want to make sure that you know that Richland County will be doing what we need to do to make sure that you receive the service and the assistance that you need. With that being said, I also want to thank those men and women of Richland County who were on the scene from day one of the storm, those members of our Public Works Department, our Utilities Department, Ombudsman's Office, Richland County Sheriff's Department, as well as many other of our men and women who regularly serve all the time during disasters whenever they are present, as well as during normal operating hours. At no point in time did Richland County government close as an organization. We did close to the public briefly on Friday because we want to make sure that citizens did not come down to the county and put themselves in harm's way. There were many reports, weather-related, that said that people that did not have to travel should stay off of the roads. And we have seen in the past when individuals follow that information, more people are safe and more responders have less concerns about not being able to do their jobs because they're dealing with responding to citizens who put themselves in harm's way. Specifically, Richland County has responded to over 1,000 service requests that we've received during the storm. Richland County has been and will continue to actively provide emergency assistance to our residents and communities that we serve. And it's paramount that you understand that. I want to just take a moment and talk to you about the information that we hoped would be clarified this afternoon related to the emergency major disaster declaration. Earlier this morning, myself, as the county administrator, along with our emergency management director, as well as our communications director, was on a phone call beginning at 9:30 with the South Carolina Emergency Management Division. During this phone call, we sought clarity as to why Richland County was not included and that the information that was being communicated was because from reports that supposedly that there was something that we had not done. So we asked for clarity as to what that Richland County is supposed to do that we had not done, what prohibited us from being included in the initial emergency disaster declaration. We were told that there are two different types of declarations. There's your traditional declaration and there's the emergency declaration that you heard about. And that particular declaration, I'm going to give you close to a quote that we received from the Emergency Management Division. So bear with me. I'm going to tell you it's not word for word, but it is very close. So we were told this morning in our 9:30 meeting that the South Carolina Emergency Management Division, with information that they had directly at their fingertips through what they were described as an exception to the policy, which is what the emergency or the expedited disaster declaration is, for a handful of counties where we could see through either satellite images or through citizens taking pictures of damage of their homes and submitting it through the EMD app, and anecdotal information related to power outages, tree debris, and other related types of impacts, where we were able to collect that information without doing any of the damage assessment process, that they submitted that in a package because it was so comprehensive and overwhelming that those counties that were initially included could clearly see that they would meet the IA categories, and that Richland County did not neglect to do anything, that process was independent of any work of the counties. And so we were concerned when we did not hear this afternoon that clarity was provided, because we were told that at 2:30 there would be a briefing, and that the focus of that briefing would be to provide clarity on the process that was undertaken by SCEMD related to the expedited major disaster declaration. So I did not hear that clarity this afternoon that was provided. I did not hear it communicated that the process that was described to us this morning at 9:30 was also then shared with the public this afternoon. So I just want to take a moment and reemphasize that Richland County did not neglect to take any action. There was no pre-paperwork that Richland County was supposed to submit. This information was confirmed by SCEMD, and shortly after the press briefing was over this afternoon, all county emergency management personnel received an email from SCEMD, and it came out about 3:52 p.m., which was closely after the press conference. And in that information, it sought to provide clarity to counties concerning that. So I'll just read that for you briefly, assuming that you all don't have that. And it says, to provide to county directors, to provide additional information for you and for your leadership and residents, we want to provide information about the expedited federal major disaster declaration granted for South Carolina. The expedited is an initial step. More counties can and will be added as more damage assessment information is available. It says South Carolina's expedited major disaster declaration request was transmitted to FEMA on late Saturday, 9/28/2024, and was granted on 9/29. The initial declaration includes 13 counties for individual assistance and 12 for public assistance. The federal government approved assistance for fewer counties than requested. More counties can and will be requested once damage assessments are conducted. And I want to pause there for just for a moment, because the traditional process, as we know, means that after a disaster happens, then those counties go through a process where they go and they do damage assessments. They drive the counties to figure out what areas have been impacted. They gather that information, they describe it, and then there's generally a number estimated that goes along with that. That is the traditional process that happens. So as I indicated earlier, as was described to us, that process did not happen as a part of the expedited major disaster declaration that was done, because that was done independent of any county's actions. So I think it's important to understand, because we are concerned that citizens may not be aware that we are working to go through the process that we traditionally go through to recover from a damage after a storm by going out and assessing that damage. If you recall yesterday, the concern that was still out was what was going to happen with the rivers and whether or not the rivers were going to crest and create any flooding that we still need to be worried about. So our Emergency Operations Center, we're still in operations mode, responding to the current weather event that ultimately is still ongoing. After the operations phase concludes, then our team will begin the full damage assessment process. While we have preliminary information, again, that does not represent the comprehensive process that normally goes into the damage assessment that is ultimately submitted to the state. So just wanted to take a moment and provide clarity for our residents, for those who are concerned as to whether or not Richland County is doing what it needs to do. Yes, we are. There was no steps that we were to take before now. State Emergency Management communicated to us that they did not send out any information ahead of the expedited disaster declaration to any counties requesting any information, nor requiring any submittals. So again, that information is fresh to us as of 9:30 this morning, when we called EMD to determine tell us why is the information out there that the county is not doing something that it should be doing. And we were told you have not neglected to do anything and that the actions that were taken were independent of Richland County and any other county. So with that being said, I'll close with a few other pieces of information that I think is important for our residents to be aware of. Regardless of whether Richland County is ultimately included on the expedited major disaster declaration, the county will still utilize the normal disaster declaration process of submitting damage assessments information to SCEMD. We have already begun preliminary damage assessments to identify all damage in Richland County and will continue this process. We will continue to respond to calls for emergency service, gather damage assessment information, and submit all required data to SCEMD. Richland County residents may report damage and share photos by calling 803-576-3439 or emailing information and pictures to the ombudsman at richlandcountysc.gov. So we want to make sure our residents know that the information that you've heard that Richland County did not do something is not consistent with what we have been told nor what we have experienced. And still moving forward, we will move forward with continuing the damage assessment process. The last thing I'll share before I take questions is that when we asked or were told what could the county now do to be included in the expedited declaration process, it was described that we could do a window tour that would include county officials, state officials, and federal officials in around 2 or 3 vehicles driving to areas in Richland County where the major damage has occurred. And that during that process, while it's not an exact science, somewhere between 25 to 50 homes that have been destroyed, meaning that they are uninhabitable with damage to them, would have to be seen in order for the expedited process to potentially apply to Richland County. So again, this is information that we received today during our conference with SCEMD. And so again, hopefully that provides clarity to individuals who are wondering what is going on and how can we move forward with potentially receiving assistance as a result of the disaster declaration that was put out. So with that being said, I'll take questions at this time.
So the governor mentioned the other day during his press conference that these counties that are on that list that was released on Monday that would be receiving assistance from FEMA, they submitted some sort of information to the state. So are you saying that's not necessarily the case with those counties?
I am saying that I can't speak on behalf of all counties, but I can tell you that I've spoken with counties that are on the list who do not have a disaster declaration at the county level in place, nor have they submitted forms or any pre-paperwork that was referenced to SCEMD.
And also, are there, I guess, a list of requirements that counties have to meet in order to get this assistance?
So the FEMA process, and I think they did talk about this a little bit, there is a threshold that the county ultimately has to meet in order to apply or to qualify and be eligible. So that happens after the damage assessment occurs. So this process, as was described to us, is that the expedited major disaster declaration is what you would almost look at, as was described to us, as an exception to the policy. And that because of there was so much information available to some counties where it was just, kind of, I guess, real easy to see that it was easy to include those counties. But other counties could still be included, but these counties just had really very visible high damage that could be easily used to start the process for the disaster declaration to be issued, and then other counties could be added on. So that's really the vehicle that was chosen. And you may ask, well, were you told why that vehicle was chosen? Based on the information we were told, is that they said the words that were used to us was, as of today, the disaster declaration and a request to the federal government related to Tropical Storm Debbie still has not been approved. And that there was a concern that that could happen here utilizing Helene, and that the state did not want that to happen, so they chose to use this vehicle called the expedited major disaster declaration. So that is what we were told, the difference between, again, more traditional and then the expedited process, which they were concerned would hinder the opportunity to get resources in the state if they did not take that approach. But that approach did not require activities from the counties. We were told that was independent of actions from the counties.
And I guess the big question from residents now is, can they expect to be added to this list for FEMA assistance?
So the process that normally goes on, that's what we're going to do. The operation phase concludes, damage assessments are being done, that damage assessment information then ultimately is sent, and then based off meeting the threshold for Richland County and based off the determination made by FEMA, that's when residents will be told, what Richland County qualifies for. So there is, the eligibility is there, but we can't tell you whether or not right now what specific categories that, we qualify for without that additional information. What other questions?
You mentioned this window tour with the state and federal officials. Is there any plans at this point to take anyone around on that, and what areas might y'all be looking at?
Yeah, so the information that we received during the call this morning, this was all new to us. So our initial concern was making sure that we could respond to the community to let them know that Richland County was in fact doing what it needed to do to be responsive to the impacts of the storm, and that citizens should not feel as though they would be left out because Richland County took some action. So the information that we received today was really secondary to our main focus at the time, because we've been spending a lot of time responding to this misinformation about Richland County not being included because of failing to do some paperwork, and it's really taken away from our efforts to move forward with the important work of the damage assessment process and the response process. So that is something that we learned today and that we will definitely try to take advantage of. But again, that is new information as of today. That is not information that we had before the meeting that we initiated this morning. What additional questions?
Do you guys have a initial damage assessment that you can provide to residents at this point about power outages, property damages, shelters, things of that nature that maybe they haven't gotten yet?
Yeah, so it's not that the residents wouldn't necessarily get that information. That information would flow up through the state process, but I do have Emergency Management Director Michael Bird here who can talk a little bit about how that process works. But the preliminary damage estimate would not be something that would really go to the citizens. It's something that would go up through the process, and I'll have Emergency Management Director Bird clarify that for you a little bit more. Director Bird?
Thank you, sir. Yes, as Administrator Brown indicated, it is a process, and we can take a disaster like this and break it down to simplistic three different phases. We have the emergency response phase, then we have the damage assessment phase, and then we have the recovery phase. And sometimes those overlap, and those are overlapping right now. We're still in the emergency response phase of this event, and we have started damage assessment based on the inquiries and the information that we've received from the public. We're in the process of putting together our our windshield assessment teams, but we will have to rely also on somebody from the state and somebody from FEMA accompanying us as we go through that process. At the height of this storm, we had over 190,000 people without power in Richland County, and that's from Dominion and several of the co-ops that serve Richland County. And we're making progress every day, and I think we're down to about 7,400 people that are still without power. And unfortunately, for those individuals, it may be several days before they are restored, their power is restored, because of the amount of damage to the large transmission lines. Once they get those up and running, then they're finding damage to the individual lines that may go to a house, and when they re-energize a circuit, they find those additional down lines, and even damage where the wires come into the home. So we're still responding to some of those events that are occurring now. So it's going to be several days probably before we do get out of the emergency response phase. As Mr. Brown indicated, the rivers are still above flood level, but they are receding, which is good. And some of those houses or dwellings that had to be, the occupants had to leave, they won't know what kind of damage they have until they get back in there and look at their property for that. Is there any other questions about the response or assessment?
Are there places set up for people in the county if they're still without power, water, so on, that they can go to get assistance?
Yeah, if anyone has a request for assistance, please let us know at 803-576-3439. And we are trying to address those on an individual level. I know we've in several neighborhoods, we've gotten water and food to those areas that have been without power for a number of days. Let me just say this before I turn it back over. We've been through this before, similar situations, and I want to let you know that Richland County will receive every bit of aid and assistance that we're entitled to. It's a process that we have to go through. It's not easy. Sometimes the rules change, but we will get there, and we will get everyone that's entitled to and eligible for assistance. We will get that for them. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to take a moment, and I want to end with what's most important. Director Berg hit the nail on the head. Residents of Richland County should feel confident that we will do everything that we're supposed to do, that we're doing everything that we're supposed to do to qualify, to be eligible for, and to be considered for assistance related to this storm. I also want residents to know that there was nothing that Richland County neglected to do, that the reason why we're having this communication to you right now directly after speaking with the South Carolina Emergency Management Division is because what we wanted to do was to bring clarity to the situation. We did not want to waste time and resources that should be focused on the betterment of our community and serving the residents of Richland County. So please be clear, Richland County administration, Richland County Council, Richland County staff have been since the beginning of the storm and will continue to be through the recovery of the storm at your side, working to serve you in the best possible way that we can. Thank you all very much for coming. Appreciate the opportunity to speak with you.